Welcome to Hancock's VMware Half Hour. And welcome back to another episode of Hancock's VMware Half Hour. Sorry, I forgot to turn the microphone on. And the reason is because it's actually deafening here. Anyway, so I'll explain. Okay, so if you watched the last video, this is part 2, and it's all about Home Labs, really. Home Labs, and I don't think I mentioned the word in the last video, white boxes. We used to call servers white boxes in the day. A white box was defined as a server that can run VMware vSphere Hypervisor ESXi, but is not actually basically on the hardware compatibility list. And of course, if you've been involved with VMware, or if you've not been involved with VMware vSphere, you will know that the requirements to run ESXi are very tight. The reason that is because the footprint of the OS is very small. So drivers, mainly network controllers and storage controllers, and servers themselves, and BIOS, etc. Everything actually goes through a certification process, and if it's certified, it goes on the hardware compatibility list. So those are the components. And then you've got servers that are on the hardware compatibility list as well. Now, all that really sort of kind of means is if you are running a server that's not on the hardware compatibility list and you have support with Broadcom, support are unlikely to engage with you if that server is not on the hardware compatibility list, because they can't reach out to the vendors and argue that their server has been put through the certification program and therefore it should work and it should not give any hardware issues. And they can actually resolve them between the vendors. If, of course, you've got a hokey-cokey server like we have here, then that's just no way that that's actually going to happen. So to recap, I was actually basically saying to you that we use a lot of these D1541D4U-2T8R motherboards. Primarily, the reason we use them is because they have a very low power Xeon chip on board, which is actually basically soldered on the board. But they are very, very low power boards compared to running something like a Dell PowerEdge R640, which there are plenty on eBay. The problem really that you actually sort of kind of get into if you buy one of those servers is, first of all, they can use an awful lot of electricity. They're very loud. And if you want to upgrade the memory and things like that, then it's going to be quite costly. Rather than if you actually sort of kind of pick a white box motherboard or a white box server that can run ESXi, then you get all the benefits without really the increased costs. So that's really why we sort of kind of call them white boxes. So in the last video, I spoke to you about obtaining a Datto server based on the ASRock rack motherboard, the D1541D4U-2T8R, and replacing the BMC and replacing the BIOS with the stock firmware from ASRock rack. And in that video, I did turn around at the end and say that I'm going to go off now and install a NVMe, because as we can see in that photograph, we've got 2 NVMe slots. If you can see them there, either side of that PCI slot, we've got 2 NVMe slots. And as if by magic, there we go. Server's up and running. And in the BIOS, it actually basically shows us that we've got a Samsung SSD 980, 500 gig NVMe drive ready basically to take our installation of ESXi 8.03. Now, I'm sure you would have seen me done this many a times. If this is the first time you've ever watched an installation of this, then this is going to be a real treat for you. So I'm just going to reset the server. I'm using this headless. So by that I mean that I am using the BMC function of this motherboard, which is another value added and benefit that, like you could use. There are quite a few NUCs that now people basically use as ESXi controllers, but you're going to have to probably use something like a KVM or PyKVM, whatever, to be able to actually see the screen, whereas I can actually basically run these completely headless. So I'm going to basically hit F11, but I think it's probably going to jump into Ventoy anyway. So if I just hit enter, hopefully I've got the right one. Okay, so I've got my Ventoy there. Now, the reason I use Ventoy, and I'm going to give you an example, just one moment, I've just got to disappear from my desk to do this, and hopefully not, I'm going to take my headphones off, hang on. So, this is the reason why I use Ventoy. I'm not quite sure if you can see that. That is a collection of USB sticks on a keychain that have various individual distros on. Let me see, we've got Unraid on one, we've got ESXi 6.7 build, you don't need to know that. Another one called Andy's Tools, another one ESXi 7.03 UB, DGX servers on another one, Ubuntu 2004, Surface RT Recovery, one called Recover, one called ESXi ARM, a few of ESXi, R720 tools. Anyway, so keyring full of USB sticks that can be replaced by one single USB stick using Ventoy. I think really the problem has become is that once upon a time, USB sticks were really, really small. They were 1 gig, they were 2 gig. You couldn't really accommodate an awful lot on them in terms of ISOs. Problem today is I'm not quite sure what the smallest USB stick out there that you can get today. Is it 16 gig, 32 gig, 64 gig? That really can have quite a few ISOs on it. And as I said, the reason I like Ventoy is that you can just copy and paste ISOs to it. You don't need to use Rufus to extract the contents, etc., and build it for you. You can just copy the ISOs to it, which I actually find is a much better way of actually storing them as well. In that, if you do need an ISO, for instance, to copy to your data store, then you can do that. It's not been extracted for you. So I will put a link to Ventoy in this description. Now, as we saw before at the end of the last video, when we booted this, for whatever reason, it starts up nicely like that. It's booting the UEFI config there, loading boot.cfg. And then the next thing, we've got all this gibberish as it loads all the drivers, the .v00s, etc. And I don't know why it does that. Obviously, the BMC interface in UEFI mode is not happy with the resolution, so I don't really know what resolutions that's running. But that really isn't a big deal for us because it's going to finish loading up those drivers. And just while it's doing this, for those that don't know, this is the only time really that ESXi installer is actually reading or writing from the disk. The moment that it's actually basically read all those installer files, they're all read into memory. And then it's actually basically uncompressed and it's now running from memory. So I could actually basically remove that USB stick from that server now, and it would basically continue to boot. And that's the same when you've actually installed the operating system as well. The read and writes are very low, but something changed. Something changed at the back end of 7.02, 7.03, where we actually started to see that USB sticks and flash drives, which have been used for donkey's years to install ESXi, started to become corrupted. So something had changed in the code of ESXi that started the destruction of these SD cards and USB flash drives. Although saying that, I don't know how many years it is now that to test out that sort of idea and proof of concept, we purchased some industrial strength SD cards that were quite costly and had slightly different flash components, I believe. The manufacturer told us. And they said that the endurance rates were many thousands of hours. And we're still to this day running ESXi 8.03 in the lab here. using those industrial strength cards, and we don't have any issues yet. So when they do crap out in the future, then I will report that. Anyway, so we're actually basically waiting for a service to start. And with that, it's a bit warm in here because I've got this other server on. One of the things I was going to mention, I'll tell you what, we'll just drop that, and I'll show you another website. Oh, it happens to be Amazon. One of the things that we are going to do, and we've done with all these one-use servers, they've got these really, really noisy jet engine type fans in them that when they actually basically ramp up, they make a hell of a noise. So what we're going to do, we're going to replace them with Noctui NF-A4-20 PWM fans. They're not as fast, and the airflow, I think, through the servers is probably not as good, but I think it's well worth it, really, to be honest with you, to cut down the noise. So whilst we wait for that server to boot, I'm just going to put this on pause, and I'll come back when it's booted. Just as I put the video on pause, the server decides that it's actually going to complete, and it's going to boot. So if you've never seen this before, let me just get the right focus here. Let me just move that a bit so I can see it. So if you've never seen before, this is the welcome screen to the ESXi 8.03 installation. If you've actually booted your server and you've actually got to the welcome screen, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to be able to install ESXi on your server. If before this you got a pink screen to death, and I tell you what, I'm going to have to open the window here because it's boiling. Hang on, I'm back. When I've got the door shut here, when I'm doing videos to keep the noise out, the air in here absolutely rockets in temperature. Like, I'm just looking at the temperature on the back of me there. It's 29 degrees C here, so it is a little bit warm. So I open the windows to get some air out, and now you'll hear the birds that aren't noise cancelled, which is strange. Okay, so as I was saying, if this is the first time that you've ever seen a VMware vSphere ESXi installation, they're all exactly the same, from 5, 5.5, 5.1, 6, 6.5, 6.7, 7, and 8. They're all exactly the same. And if your installation actually basically gets you to a welcome screen, then there's a good chance, really, that you're going to be able to install ESXi. But it will warn you. If it doesn't like the processor, it'll tell you. If it doesn't like the storage controller, it will tell you. If it doesn't like the network interface, it will tell you. So I'm going to basically just hit enter. Yep, I'm going to accept the license agreement. I'm going to press F11. It's now basically just going to go off and scan available devices, storage devices, to see what it can install to. So there's a couple of that's interesting. There's a 906. There's a 1 terabyte disk there, and there's a 2 terabyte disk there. Didn't know that these servers this time have actually come with disks. I think that is an error on behalf of the recycling company. I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to use them. Anyway, so we could install to USB sticks, but we're not going to because, of course, it's not supported. So there's our NVMe Samsung SSD 980 500 gig. Now, this isn't on the hardware compatibility list. This is a consumer device. So your mileage is going to vary as to how long that's going to last. But this is the thing about home labs. Home labs really should be cheap, or really as cheap as you can afford. I know that there are some VMware vExperts that have spent tens of thousands of pounds on home labs. I think there's one vExpert, I think, that his home lab cost, I think, is in excess of $20,000 for his home lab. But personally, I think home labs should be as cheap as chips, with very, very little investment. But that really depends on your hobby, and it wouldn't be a hobby unless you spent money on it. Okay, so I'm going to select the NVMe Samsung SSD 980 500 gig, followed by enter. I'm now going to select my locality. I'm going to enter a password. Now, a couple of golden nuggets on passwords. Don't forget them. because there is no mechanism in ESXi at all to reset the password. There's no backdoor. You reset the password. The only thing you can do is reinstall the operating system and remember the password that time round. You know, there's mechanisms out there to boot from a Linux live CD and effectively hack it to change the password. That's become a little bit more difficult of late because now the configuration information is actually encrypted. Surprise, surprise. It didn't used to be encrypted, so you can just basically get into the etc password file, change the password in there, shut down, restart, off you go again. But now it's actually basically encrypted, so it's a little bit more work. It's much easier basically just to reinstall from scratch. Paying attention as to where you've actually put your virtual machines. Don't overwrite the VMFS data store, and then just add those virtual machines back. So there's a little bit of a tip for you there. So press enter. Okay, so it's telling me CPU support warning. CPU on this host may not be supported in the future. May not be supported in the future. This particular, I'm just going to go away and have a Google because I think that this processor, which is, I'll tell you now, I thought it was Sandy Lake, but just let me go and Google that for you, and I'll let you know immediately what it is. It's a Broadwell. It's a Broadwell processor. So Broadwell processors have got a little bit more mileage in them. So, you know, they're saying that, you know, 8.03 is not supported. But I'll come back to you and I'll let you know whether or not this is actually supported by 9 in the future. Anyway, so what I'm sort of going to say to you is that if you're on a budget, you want to build a home lab, grab one of these boxes. You know, for probably less than a couple of $100. Okay, you're going to have to add a couple of NVMe sticks, but I've got some crucial 1 terabyte NVMe sticks on their way. I think they're about £70 each. You know, so ignoring the, and I think the Samsung ones now, I think the 500 gig ones are about 50 quid. So, you know, this server actually basically shipped with 48 gigs of RAM. Okay, it's not a great deal of RAM, but certainly that's going to allow you to run VMware vCenter Server, which is about 14 gig. And then you've got a handful of VMs that you'll be able to put it on as well on one single box. You can get additional RAM and max it out to 128 gig, which is actually basically going to give you a little bit more mileage. You can be able to put some more virtual machines on it. Or you could do a whole nested arrangement. You know, you could put ESXi on this 128 gig, create a handful, create 3 ESXi servers nested, and then have a little vSAN. If that's all you need to do for your learning, because you want to change jobs, you want to apply for a VMware vSphere role. Self-learning. Okay, so I'm now basically going to hit F11 to install it. This shouldn't take very long because it's NVMe. It's quite fast. So we should be done fairly quickly. We're not getting any error messages. Now, the final test is when we actually basically boot this in a minute. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to basically pause this. I'm going to whip out these USB sticks. USB sticks have been whipped out. So without further ado, what I'm now going to do, I'm just going to hit enter, and I'm hoping that this server is going to restart, and it's going to boot ESXi UEFI first time, and then we will get to a boot screen. Now, if you don't get a, we refer to it as a purple screen of death. I think it's more like a pink screen of death, but I'm sure you've seen a blue screen of death on Windows. On ESXi, if we have hardware issues, we'll get a crash, which is pink or purple. And that will give us an indication that, one, it doesn't like our hardware. The hardware could be faulty, or there could be a component which it doesn't like. Okay, so therefore we're loading the boot.cfg. And that looks good. This time, of course, you notice that it is actually basically displaying the ESXi config on the screen, or the ESXi boot on the screen. We didn't get a load of gobbledygook that time. You may not hear that in the background, that as it's initialized, the fans have actually basically sped up on the server. But it's all looking good. It's initialized. We've got 47.9 gig of memory, or 48 gig of memory. We've got an Intel Xeon CPU D1541 at 2.1 gig. I think that bursts up to about 2.7 gig as well. To be filled in by OEM is completely normal, because these AS ROC rack motherboards are OEM'd. So that's what we can expect. I have actually tried to change that. I have got the tools. AS ROC did give me the tools to change that, so I could put the AS ROC rack details in there, but I was getting a an unsupported error. Unsupported error when I tried to use the FRU. Okay, so we booted. So the fact that we've successfully booted sort of kind of suggests that VMware ESXi 8.03 is happy on our server. Now, you may note that is build. My memory is failing me. So I'm just going to basically use the internet here. So that's build. I can't even find the build. That is, yeah, that is build ESXi 8.03 ISO. So there have been 1, 2, 3 updates since that. And what we'll do, we'll log in via SSH in the next video, and we'll basically do a quick update over the air for the very, very last time, because as you probably have noticed, that in the future, I think from the 23rd, 24th of April, you will need to use a download token generated from the Broadcom portal. So if you are running a home lab and you don't actually have licenses, I'm going to use that. Seek and ye shall find. The updates are out there. The depot files are definitely out there on the internet. You just have to basically just put a little bit of legwork in, basically, to find them. And currently, of course, we don't actually basically have a network connection connected up. I need to find a network connection from somewhere to do that. Anyway, so if you've enjoyed this video, then please thumbs up and like. If you don't like this video, then please thumbs down and don't like it. But once again, thank you for watching Hancock's VMware Half Hour on this little mini series in Hancock's VMware Half Hour on home labs and what I use here in the home lab myself to basically do all this VMware stuff. These are the preferred servers that we use. Yes, we have vendor servers, we have HPE servers here, we have Dell servers, but we actually basically run quite a lot of production loads on these, and we actually basically run quite a lot of home labs on these. And I actually basically think that they are an excellent server, excellent motherboard, and I think really that these are definitely under the radar. And you know, if you're wanting a low power home lab with constraints, because 128 gig, 8 cores, that's all you actually get on one server, but you do get 10 gig, you do get 2 NVMe slots, and you do get 2 PCI slots. Now later, when my next NVMe stick comes, I'm going to use one of these little things. You know, these are the cheapest chips, you know, they're about £5, and this is just a PCI to M2 adapter that just drops in a slot. It doesn't have a backplane on it, but it doesn't really need a backplane on it. This is actually going to fit in 1U. I think it's going to fit in 1U. You know, so that will basically plug in, you know, the other slot with no problems. And, you know, if you wanted to use PCI pass-through with a GPU, you could in one of these servers. Now, I'm not suggesting you do, but, you know, there's a lot of talk on people wanting to use PCI pass-through for gaming, etc., and have a virtual machine, put a game on it, and then use a physical GPU, basically. You could do that on one of these servers. Anyway, so once again, thank you very much for watching this video. Come back soon when I show you how to update this server. And then we'll sort of kind of get into later when Amazon arrives with my NVMe sticks, and we'll bob them in as well, and we'll start configuring those as well. So once again, thanks so much for watching. Cheerio. Goodbye.